Jenny McCarthy Show. Oh!
Welcome back to the Jenny McCarthy Show. I'm Jenny McCarthy Wahlberg. I cannot wait to talk to my next guest. I have a few things to say before he speaks. I got to tell you guys, it's been 23 years. 23 years. Our anniversary for Singled Out was last week. We've always got along, which is more than I can say about any other co-host I've ever worked with in the past 23 years. I have never cheered anyone on more than him in this business. Maybe my cousin Melissa. I'll include her in the group. He's the smartest celebrity in Hollywood, maybe tying with Cheech, both on Celebrity Jeopardy. He's the definition of how to reach the next level in what used to be gaming, but now his life. And somehow, after 23 years, we're both doing network game shows still. Authored books, radio shows, podcasts. And you know what? We found the love of our lives. And I would have to say life turned out pretty okay, hasn't it, Chris Hardwick?
It's insane. It was funny listening to those clips. It's like, wow, we were loud. I mean, it was fun. It was really fun, though.
It was so fun, but it was obnoxious TV.
Yeah. Did I ever tell you, because I'd been working at MTV for a handful of months before we did
That's right.
Singled
You
Out.
did another show.
I did another show that was a tragic failure. And then they had me VJ for a summer, and then in the fall they said, oh, we're going to do the pilot for this show, Singled Out. Did I ever tell you about the co-host audition process for that?
No, I mean, I went through mine, but...
Yes, but I already had
You were hired.
job, and so I got this weird, it was like watching an operating theater, like I watched all these people come in, and there was one young woman that they were pretty sure they were going to go with, and you were like the last person that came in, and they were almost... I say this because it all worked out. They were almost dismissive because of your playmate-hood. They were like, well, I don't know. She's a playmate. That might be weird. And so you came in and just like a lightning shock mane of hair and like acid wash jeans. And you crushed, and then you left, and they were like, they honestly just didn't expect it. They
wouldn't let me in the audition, right?
No.
Yeah, my manager said I saw it on his fax machine, and I said, what is that? And I saw the MTV logo, and he goes, they're looking for a game show host. You don't want to be a game show host. I said, why wouldn't I want to be? This is MTV. People get to see who I am. So I said, let me go to it. He called, and they said, we won't hire Playmate. MTV will never hire Playmate.
Yeah.
So then there was an open casting call. I got in line for that.
Did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I made it through the first one. I didn't want to give him my headshot because it said Miss October. So I thought I'd stand out, and I drew a picture of Lucy, like from Charlie Brown.
Yep.
And literally signed my name, and then got a call back. And they called me back so many times, Chris, because they thought my clothes were going to accidentally fall off.
That's I had no idea that you went through that, because there was a very different time then, because now anyone can be everything, know. But at the time, people were very binary. They were either this or they were that,
right.
And they didn't. The idea. And I hope this doesn't sound disrespectful in any way, but the idea that a playmate could actually be self-aware and have a sense of humor and make fart jokes, it was just unheard of at the time, because no one had ever been allowed
to do it.
No one had ever been allowed to do that. Everyone was really shoved in the whatever box they were in.
Exactly. In their lanes.
In their lane, yeah. And you came in and completely defied their expectations, and you defied and really changed the way I think people see, people see people. It's like, oh wow, this person that I thought was this is actually really funny and not afraid to make fun of herself and very self-aware, and
So, and let me just compliment you. You were so smart, always so smart. Way smarter than the audience watching.
I was so not comfortable on that show for so long, because I never had I was a very nerdy kid, and I didn't socialize well with other kids, because I just didn't like a lot of the shit that they were into.
Yeah.
And I mean, I liked, at the time, in the sort of proto-nerd era of the 80s, like I liked computers and all these things before
everybody else.
But now everyone's like, I have a fucking computer in my pocket. But at the time, and so I was around scores of people around my age that I wouldn't have hung out with in college, because I wouldn't have, and I wanted to be liked and I wanted to be accepted. I had all the nerd fantasies. But that's when I realized after that first season, I was like, I'm shouting into the mic. I'm trying to shout over 100 people.
Right.
And I realized, if I just get really quiet, I can just take shots at people like a dickhead would, and no one in the audience can hear me, but people at home will hear. And so that ultimately informed like how I approached that show. But it was, that when people go, "Oh, I watched Singled Out," I'm sorry to bring that up. I go, that show was so much fun.
It was so much fun.
I had a blast.
It was a daily show. It was a grind. We shot 4 shows a day.
Yes.
People wanted to know what it was like backstage. I know the questions that I usually get is, "I love you on remote control."
I've gotten that too. So, thank you. I appreciate that.
They again, did we ever have sex?
Always.
And still. And we had such a great brother and sister relationship.
That's exactly what I said too. I said, I don't, because they always said, I used to have a bit about it in my act actually years ago, because people go, "Hey, did you have sex?" And I go, "No." And they go, "I would have been all over that." And I was like, I bet you wouldn't have, because just because you work with someone doesn't mean that, And
I was dating a very old man at the time.
Yeah, I remember that Ray, your manager.
Yeah.
And, but I will say that I say with all sincerity that there was that chemistry really was very brother and sister, and we started this very strange journey together, which I don't think no one I had come off a failed show, so all my dreams had been dashed. So I thought, well, no one's going to give a shit about this. And then all of a sudden, in retrospect, I knew that something was up, because we were making almost $0 in the beginning.
$300 a day.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah. And I remember after the first season, MTV just gave me a $15,000 bonus.
Wow.
Which sounds crazy, and I realized it was a tactic at the time, because they knew that if I had better agents, they would have immediately renegotiated that deal, because it was a hit show. So they gave me to them almost no money. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, $15,000!"
If it makes you feel better, I got $500 an episode at my highest.
I don't think it wasn't until the end that I got several $100. I mean, it was whatever. You didn't take those jobs. It was basically like it was like working in the mailroom of the entertainment industry. Yeah, you take the job to get in, and then of course you went on to do so many other things.
It was one of those things, and you hear these stories all the times where people say, like, "You know what? I gave up. This was my last attempt at trying anything," and it really was. Single Out was it. I was done. Steven Seagal. I had my Steven Seagal moment of auditions, of getting the Me Too'd and all this kinds of shit that I was cried and going, "I'm not doing this anymore." And I guess happened to work out, because Single Out worked.
It did. Yeah, it did work. It worked for 4 years, which is basically like. I think that's 100 years in regular television time.
Did you ever get turned on by the contestants?
No, and I never. I mean, I was. It's not that I never went through periods of dating, but I was very much a serial monogamist.
Me
and
too.
So I was in a relationship at that time, and so it legitimately didn't occur to me
to check out the goods anywhere.
And I think it's hard for people to think that, like,
right.
"Oh, you weren't sleeping with your co-host, you weren't sleeping with anyone on the show." Like, no, I just wasn't that. I didn't think that way. And it was, maybe it was a pruder time. You know
what? We had the same mentality, though. I was a serial monogamist. Neither of us looked, which is kind of weird. You think one of us would be boning in the back room, but we haven't. Have you heard about the reboots that they try to do?
I heard about it. I saw it.
No.
And because my friend Ryan hosted it. And so, this was probably 2009, 2008, 2009. And I saw it, and I would have thought, like, well, how can that show not work? We proved, we did 300. Well, you did two something, and I did the last season and a half, so it was like 325. There's no way that wouldn't work. And I watched it, and the problem between then and when they redid it is that this sort of like hipster culture became very like too self-aware. And so no one was really having fun. No one was having fun on the show. Everyone just looked really flat and like being, and we didn't give a shit back then. We just all looked like idiots.
Yeah.
So,
although the men would get a little pissed at me when I put toilet bowls on their head, but I didn't give a shit.
Boy,
either.
I have to give you so many props and so much respect for being having the strength of character, because I don't think a lot of people, male or female, would have survived. So there was a thing on the show called the "Don't Touch Jenny" rule, and the reason that it developed, we had the stage manager named Joey Mead, and Joey used to threaten to beat the shit out of people because, so the show would start off and there was a woman picking from 50 guys, and you would be in the middle of this dating pool of guys. And, what may not be surprising is that when men get together in large groups, they become garbage.
That's right.
And so there was a lot of like dudes were grabbing you and making inappropriate comments. And also because you were a playmate, there was a lot of objectification and they felt very entitled to, it's like, whatever you think about like entitled dudes now, I think it was so like if you were to have video of what was happening to you at the time,
if I had a GoPro camera on me,
blatant sexual harassment. And so Jenny, for the audience, Jenny started fucking punching dudes back and shoving dudes and like, get the fuck, like you really like the Chicago case. I don't know what it was, but they ultimately, then it became like a badge of honor for you to punch a dude.
Yes.
But
I waited for that red light to go on.
I have to commend you because I honestly, in that situation, don't think I would have had the strength. I would have been like, I gotta go home. I don't feel, and you didn't, and you stuck it out, and that strength of character sort of became one of your defining qualities on the show, was that no one could push you around. And so it's funny to me to hear that, that you might have had those moments like off the show of just feeling weird or insecure about it or strange or like, but because
verbally abused.
Yes, of course, it was terrible. But you navigated it beautifully.
Thank you.
It was not an easy thing to do.
First of all, I think we both did a great job, and I think that it's a shame that the show can't continue in some way or another.
Right.
Or can it?
Wait a minute.
You know what I've been saying to like network people, because they always talk about Singled Out, and I go, why isn't there a one-off comedy special that's divorced Singled Out? I think it's like a comedy special or one-off. I think it would be fucking huge.
Divorced Singled Out.
We both work on different networks now, but I think in the future, if we think about it, it would
I don't have to think about it. It's a great idea. Someone should do it.
Everyone's divorced that we know of. How many people?
All the people who are on Singled Out when they were in college who are now in their mid-40s.
Yeah.
Who are going...
divorced and single.
Yeah, but the categories would be like, I like a guy with bowel control. Let's get rid of the short shitters. Like, I don't know if the categories are going to change.
Some categories would stay the same with like man shaving and shit like that.
But I always say when people say, oh my God, that was like the greatest show, they go, it's too, like, I wish I could see that somewhere. And I go, it's probably better that you just remember it. It's like things get better.
It's true.
Like if if we were to watch it now, we'd be like, what the fuck? Like, I just don't know if it would.
Especially myself. I'm like, really, Jenny? You could have pulled back a little bit.
No. But it worked so well because you did the sketch show and then the sitcom and stuff. And actually, I don't know if I told you this either, or maybe I did at the time, but I felt too guilty to ever look at any of your magazine spreads because I knew you, and I just felt like, that's not. And we were in the makeup room one day, and you had a magazine that. And you were reading, it was your spread, one of your photo shoots was in it. And I go, I've never actually seen it before. And you go, here! And you turned it around. And I go, I have a lot of questions. And you go, what? Like, why doesn't the carpet match the drapes? And I was a very sheltered, nerdy kid. And so I was like,
I'm so sorry.
Yes, of course. Like,
Do you also remember me clogging the toilet on the first day?
Yes, I remember you clogging the toilet, leaning your head out the door. And you kind of, like, your tongue was up and you're like, excuse me, can I get a plunger? And
then on the intercom, I hear, we need a plunger sent to Jenny's dressing room.
Well, do you remember for people listening, like, oh my God, you guys, can you catch up not on the air? But that first, when we did the first episodes at Lake Havasu,
yes,
and you lit your room on fire.
I did.
And we get picked up to shoot the first episodes ever of Singled Out at spring break in Lake Havasu, and you look really unhappy, like you're shaken up.
I was black, charcoal black.
And I was like, what happened? You go, I lit my room on fire. You had left a candle burning.
Yes.
And it, like, the flame, it was in the bathroom.
It melted my hot rollers, which then caught to the wall, which caught to the ceiling.
You said you woke up to crackling in the room, and there was flames.
Yes. And then my boyfriend at the time had to, like, cover his body and then run out of the room to cover. The fireman said we had about 3 more minutes before we would have died.
Jesus Christ.
No alarms went off. No sprinkler went off. But here I am. I have to
good old Lake Havasu.
Right. I want to move on because your story is, we both have gone through some amazing.
God, that's so crazy because I want to ask you so many questions. Can I just ask you one question before you? What is happening what's going on in your head as this weird journey is happening? As you know, was Ray coming up with these crazy ideas? Because it all worked. Were you part of that process? Are you grasping? Because it went from, hey, I don't know if we should hire this girl, to a few months later, you're like on the cover of Rolling Stone.
It was pretty quick.
And how does that fuck with your head? And how did that affect?
You know what? It was, I mean, from the aspect of when it first started, I remember when they first said they want you on the cover of Rolling Stone. I go, why would I be on a rocker? Like, I didn't even know. I mean, I just worked at a Polish grocery store right. just a few months ago. So it all happened really fast, but it got so fast to the point where there was one point where I wanted to drive my car into a pole to make it stop, and I wished it all away. I cried and wished it all away because it was too much for me. I wanted this, like, just normal, not to be so recognizable, so just there was a page on Entertainment Weekly that said Jenny Meter, and it said where I was every week, and it was an overexposed thing, and I really wanted it to go away, which is really why I dated that old man, so I could stay home and watch Wheel of Fortune with him. It was no one at that time, no younger person at the time would watch Wheel of Fortune. I mean, think about it, Chris, because I didn't want to party. Most people would go out and be like, I'm a star. I hid. I didn't want to do anything. I wanted it to kind of go away. So that's how it kind of fucked with my head.
It's really interesting.
And then, but this is my interview to you because I'm
Please, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No,
okay.
I don't mind it, but then I mean, this is about you, and I want to know because I dove into a lot of your articles, and I've done some pilots with you along the way.
Yeah.
I remember being interviewed and doing some stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then I'm reading that you went through. Did you go through AA, or did you just quit hardcore on your own?
I quit hardcore. I went to AA. So this was 2003. I was sort of at the bottom of this, booze pit. And it was really strange because singled out, like, my MTV stuff happened very accidentally and very easily. And, as much as I wanted to do stand-up, I was a comedian, but I was conditioned too young to think that work came very easily. And so I didn't have a plan. I didn't give it the care that it needed. I don't think I really appreciated it the way that I should have. And so, after Single Out ended in 98, for about 5 years, it was just a deep, and I had a lot of anxiety issues and a lot of depression issues and a lot of not feeling comfortable. And so I think I was just medicating. But yes, so in 2003, I quit. And I went to AA a couple times, and I have, I have all the respect in the world for it, but it didn't resonate with me necessarily.
Right. That's what I wondered.
And I thought there was something wrong with me because I'm like, oh my God, I've been to AA and I don't feel it's not. And a friend of mine's wife said, oh, Jimmy, he doesn't go to, and it just never occurred to me, like, really? I thought it was me. So, but the important thing is I had a good therapist. I had a good support structure. I sort of built a version of what it would be. I mean, it's difficult to do it on your own because you really do need a support structure.
You really
and AA is a phenomenal support structure for people. And I'm not a particularly religious person.
I was going to say, you do believe in God?
I'm not really a religious person. And so, but, I certainly don't begrudge anyone who is. But it took like maybe 10 or 12 years of sobriety to realize that when they say higher power, surrendering to a higher power, it's not that you have to, like, I believe in an old man on a cloud with a beard who created people out of clay. Yeah. It ultimately means when you're an alcoholic or any kind of addict, I think it really is just a way to say that we suffer from obsessive thinking, like very obsessive thinking.
Absolutely.
And we tend to be very self-centered. And so it's very difficult. Like, an example of this is you go to a party, you meet someone, you say something, and you even go, oh my God, I said the dumbest thing. That person probably hates me. That person's probably thinking about him. And then you run to them again and go, I'm so sorry, I said that thing, I'm dumb. And they're like, I know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, they're thinking about themselves. So you think everything is about you. You think you're the center of the universe for whatever reason. And surrendering yourself to that higher power is basically just saying, I'm not the center of the universe. I don't control everything. I don't have to control everything, which is scary and freeing at the same time because, we addicts tend to be very control freaky.
To live in the land of I don't know is something that I realized was such freedom.
Sure.
Because we always want to control what's next. We're so fearful. We manifest what we fear most.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It does become sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I do believe that what if questions tend to be the worst questions people ask themselves. Like, what if I fail at this? What if I suck? What if I... because I think your brain is ultimately this answer machine that will answer any questions you throw at it. So if you give it bad questions, you'll get bad answers. Why do I suck? Why didn't I do that? Oh, because you're a piece of shit. But if you say, what can I learn from this, or how can I do it, then your brain will start coming up with better answers. And I think it's just trying to learn how to sort of be the pilot of your brain rather than the passenger of your brain, if that makes sense. So you're not being, because most people think your emotions happen and you're led around by life, but ultimately you really can start to control like how you react to things, how you perceive things, and it's not like I have it all figured out.
I taught my son this way because my son, is on the spectrum, and so to explain things to him, because he had anxiety and panic attacks, and so I taught him that these thoughts, because he says, who is that talking to me?
Right.
And I knew it wasn't schizophrenia because the things like you're ugly or you're this or bad. And I said, let's call it your ego.
Sure.
And your ego is an energy, an entity. It's not you. So whenever ego's talking, know that he's trying to kidnap your thoughts. He's trying to kidnap your thoughts.
Sure.
So he's trying to make you feel bad. So don't let it say, ego, you know what? I'm not letting you kidnap my thoughts.
Yeah, you don't have to. You can ignore what your brain tells you.
Yes. And you separate yourself and realize you are not your thoughts.
There's a great book that I read not that long ago called Ego is the Enemy. And it's just a really fascinating, like that a lot of the decisions we make that are poor decisions tend to be ego-based decisions. And also the ego things that we do tend to cause the most concussive falls because your ego is what you're putting on the line. So whether it's you hang out with people because you're trying to be cool, or you're in a relationship
100%.
because the person that you're with, you think other people are going to think you're going to absorb some cool, it's like all those ego decisions tend to be the most deadly emotional
100%.
decisions.
If you're going to make a decision off ego, you're going to get ego back.
Yes.
Perfect example in a relationship. I can't break up with him because I'll be alone.
Right.
And I'm scared of being alone, so I'm going to stay with him.
Right.
You're going to stay in an abusive relationship because you're scared of being alone. Those choices are...
Well, yeah, because a lot of times people will choose familiarity over the unknown, even if that familiar situation is toxic.
Going back to the I don't know.
Yes, but I think there's a deeper layer of that too, which is that we, for whatever reason, and maybe it's around puberty, but we kind of form this identity in our heads of whoever we were around that time. And I feel like we're always in service to that 13 or 14-year-old person, and we constantly are trying to, I guess, make up for stuff that happened when we were kids. I don't know what it is, but ultimately, you just have to remember that you're not that like we are adults. We're not that kid. We don't have to do everything that we don't have to listen
when
to those
that tantrum
voices.
is happening. It's like it could be like where your core trauma happened when you were a child.
Yeah.
These
are you're listening to older people who've had therapy, Chet.
I do want to know though, because I do talk a lot on my show about like overcoming shit because I love it.
Sure.
And I've gone through so much with Evan. But you did have a big shift and transition, and your life has. I literally could cry with how happy I am.
I appreciate that
for you and your success because you worked your fucking balls off.
Yeah, it was just, I got sober in 2003 and I realized I had this this disposition that gravitated toward obsessive thinking, and so I thought, okay, well, I know it's not good to obsess over things, but while I'm working on that, because when you quit something, it doesn't just fix you. It basically just clears the tables. You have the clarity of thought so that you can start doing the...
Well, then you start being addicted to something else.
Of course you do. Of course. And with me, I'm sure it was work, but also I knew that... I became sort of addicted to self-improvement and self-help and stuff because I thought, listen, if I'm gonna obsess over something, rather than it be drinking and beating myself up all the time, because I think we all have this idea that we deserve a certain amount, and if we get more than that, fuck us, we don't deserve that, and that's when people start to self-destruct and tear their shit apart, and all that's just invented, like all of our stuff, it's just invented. But anyway, I decided I'm gonna focus on improvement, because at least that's constructive. And so I started learning time management. I'd never really assumed responsibility for anything. A lot of my addiction, I think, was about avoiding responsibility in life and emotionally. And so I just started learning how do I manage time? How do I create goals?
And
how
these
do
are
I
things
follow?
you can control.
These are things I can control. I can't control what happens in the world outside, but I can control how I respond to those things and what I do and the actions that I take every day. And every day is an opportunity to try to make something new.
I think one of the biggest things that for people too is getting either rid of the voice,
Right.
quieting the voice, or not believing the story that's being told.
Yeah.
How did you manage that? Because I know you had anxiety, panic attacks.
Sure.
How do you quiet that voice?
It's tricky because, anxiety is incredibly insidious because it will mimic anything. So, whether or not it's a voice in your head that's, telling you that you're a piece of shit, or whether it's, whether it's medical maladies, like if you look up the symptoms of anxiety, it's literally like every major symptom you could have for almost anything, anxiety will manifest.
Yeah.
And I think some of that is to distract you. Like if you're really freaking out about something and you're like, oh my God, I have this weird I have this pain in my side. I almost kind of think that's your brain trying to I think your brain has good intentions,
right?
But it just doesn't. Your brain at any moment wants you to feel good in any moment, so it never really has your long-term happiness. It just thinks like, oh, if I cram this cupcake in my face, I'll feel better for a second, and that'll distract me from this anxiety that I feel. And so you just don't tend to think long-term. But in terms of the anxiety, I guess I started learning how to, like you said, ignore it, or just kind of ride along with it, or just feel like it's a douchebag roommate where I'm like, yeah, I hear you, and I don't.
Do you ever play out the worst case scenario?
Sure, sometimes I do, where it's like, there is that like, okay, and then what happens? Like,
right.
Oh my God, if I don't get this job, it's going to be, well, then what happens? Well, then I guess I don't get it, and then I guess I could go make something else.
That's right.
I mean, I
right?
guess I could.
I guess what? I'm still alive.
Well, you know what's crazy is that everything that I ever lamented not getting, whatever, whether it was a relationship or a job or something, it would have been terrible. Like when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, my life is so much better. If I had gotten that thing, but at the time it was,
right.
So yeah, so it was a lot of therapy, and it was a lot of, it was just a lot of self-help books and trying to, and I still, I'm not perfect at it. I still feel like I have a long way to go. It really is an ever-growing process. You don't just, with mental health, you don't just fix it and you're done.
No.
It's maintenance, and sort of like what I said when Anthony Bourdain committed suicide, I said, we maintain our cars, we maintain our careers, we maintain our fucking social media accounts, but so few people really stop to maintain their mental health, or really, ask for help when they need it, or pursue things.
Stigma is still so negative.
Of course there is, and there shouldn't be. It's okay. You're not broken because you have anxiety, because you have depression. It's just a thing. It's just a thing.
And we're going to have to start talking about it soon, because 1 in 5 kids have a mental disorder.
Yeah.
I mean, and that number is getting worse every year. It's going to be 1 in 2 very soon. Speaking of children, to go on a later subject, planning on having any?
Yeah, I mean, my wife...
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
She's gorgeous.
She's amazing.
Oh, her wedding dress was everything.
Designed by Christian Siriano, who was
beautiful.
incredible.
You looked handsome, too.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, I had a tux made for my wedding.
Just by Prada.
Yeah, whatever. But my wife is great because our wedding was so much fun. We both like a lot of the same shit. So,
you guys do like monster zombie shit.
She was like, I really want to have zombie servers at the wedding. And I was like, I want to help you realize this dream. We had a Star Wars, we had a droid, we had a R5D4 from Star Wars. And, I didn't allow any speeches at the wedding, because I don't have to make people sit through that, all that shit, all those inside stories. Remember that time? They're like, no one fucking remembers. This is just, like, how long do we have to sit through this? And also, most of my friends are comedians. I'm like, oh my, I don't want them to get drunk. And
you're right.
I don't know what they're going to say, like my in-laws are here. The ceremony was like 12 minutes. And Lydia very smartly said, I'm going to make everyone check their phone at the door. And I was like, you can't do that. This is people's lifelines. And she goes, it was, when she puts her foot down, that's it. And so she's very accommodating, but I know when she's serious, like, okay. And it was the best. How often are you in a situation where there's not a fucking phone?
Exactly.
People recording, not living in the moment. Like, everyone remembered the whole night. Everyone engaged with each other. It was like being present. It was unbelievable.
It was almost like the best gift that people could give you.
It really was. Yeah. So wedding's great. She wants to have kids, and I never thought I did until I met her, and now I am terrified of it. But
I think you'd be a great dad.
I don't know. I hope so. I just hope that I'm not. I don't want the kid to get any of the anxiety stuff.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Because
I don't.
I know that he or she will be prone to that. On the other hand,
Well, don't fuck them up.
we have a shit. Oh my God, we have a lot of fucking toys in the house.
I mean,
so.
it is kind of weird that when you look back and you've done enough therapy, how everyone has some core trauma. No, it doesn't have to necessarily be abuse. It could be moving too much.
Well, yes, because if someone hasn't suffered worse abuse, that is the superlative trauma in their lives, and so you can't. It's hard to discount anyone's. I think most people are doing the best they can, but that's just part of the human experience. But we have this dumb idea that like we have to live on this 0 or 100% scale where it's like this idealized sort of magazine, this matrix of bullshit that is the Instagram life that everyone wants you to see,
Blech.
which is, and I do it too. I'm not, but it's not, at least understanding like, oh, that's not life and that's not real and nothing is black or white. Things are gray and it's okay. And sometimes I feel like shit and I don't want to get out of bed and that's fine.
And that's how you teach your kids.
Of course. Okay, good.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
No one explains us to that to kids anymore.
Yeah.
That is how you raise a child.
Right.
Lydia, and have you met the mother-in-law, I would imagine?
Oh, yeah.
All is well?
Everything's great.
Does she love you?
Great. I think she does. I mean, we get along. I adore her, by the way.
I'm so glad.
She was Lydia and I, my dad passed away very suddenly in 2013.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. You didn't kill him. You weren't his heart.
Is your mom still around?
Mom's still good.
Tell her I said hi.
She loves you. I absolutely
love her.
will.
Okay.
So my dad dies in 2013. I'm sorry, this is long, boring, romantic story. No. My dad, it's a death-related romantic story. So my dad dies in 2013. I have work the next day on Talking Dead, and I go in. AMC says, you don't have to come in. I go, I'm going to come in. I just want to be distracted.
Yes, exactly.
Didn't expect my dad to drop dead, but he did. So I'm there. After the show, my friend introduces me to this girl, Lydia, who had never been to a TV taping before, wanted to go to a TV taping. She shows up. We say hi very briefly. I'm in a relationship at the time. She's in a relationship at the time. We leave, and I process my dad's death. 9 months later, we're both single. Same friend says, you should ask out Lydia Hurst. And I go, okay, I'll just call this girl and ask her out. And he goes, well, I already asked her out, and she wants to go out with you. Oh, okay, weird. So we go on a date. It turns out her father died a month after mine. He had cancer for 8 years. And so our entire first date was dead dad talk. And it was the greatest first date because there was none of the, so what do you like to, it was almost like a fucking podcast where we just connected on this incredibly deep level.
It's right, therapeutic.
But the crazy thing about it, and again, I'm not like the universe is a magic wand that, like I just don't, whatever. It's just not my thing, but fine. So, but when I look at it, it freaks me out because the day after my dad died, I met the person I was going to marry. And that sort of floored me for a while because it just means that, whether there's magic in the universe or not, you never know what's around the corner.
Absolutely.
In the darkest moment, there can be this, this beacon of light that you never, ever saw. But anyway, her family's great. Her mom was amazing. And,
I'm so fucking happy for you. And what's ahead? Like, where do you go? Like, you've accomplished so much now. What is the next thing we go, okay?
Well, for one, I just think, first of all, I think it's amazing that we're still in the game. We're both still in the game.
I mean, it's crazy this very limited amount of people that are still relevant in the business. It is an impossible game to play.
It is. I think that's the first hurdle is just like being able to stay in it. And not get in your own way, which I feel like I try to do constantly. But so I'm doing the show The Wall on NBC. I'm doing the Talking Dead, and then AMC gave me a chat show for when Talking Dead isn't on.
I love those chat shows.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm doing one in 3 hours, and so we're premiering this Sunday, and my guests this season are like Donald Glover and Chris Pratt and Amy Adams and Bill Hader and Ethan Hawke and Seth Rogen and then
you've got ID10.
ID10T is this festival that I put on. It's like a music festival with a Comic-Con at the middle of it and a comedy festival. And
did you change it was Nerdist? Did you change the name at all?
Yeah, because I basically left Nerdist, and so because I just didn't want. I mean, it's like after a while. being an employee at a company that I created. You know, the parent company was starting to go in directions, like a bigger company bought it.
Got it.
And they were starting to go in directions that I didn't really
get it.
And then, and at a certain point I was like, oh, wait, I don't have to work here. Like, I can go make my own stuff.
So you weren't a consultant or anything on it?
I was for a while.
Okay.
And then I just wasn't real. I started to get nervous about where stuff was going. Everyone who works at Nerdist is amazing, by the way. That is such an incredible collection of kids. Like, I'm 90 years old. These kids with their music and their tattoos. But the parent company, the Nerdist people are amazing. With the parent company,
But you have to know what you did for nerds, because my son is called a nerd all the time.
That makes me so happy that he embraced nerd culture.
That he now knows it's cool.
Well, it wasn't when I was growing up. And
right, but you changed it.
Well, I didn't do that.
Yeah, you did.
Well, all right. But it's been amazing that all the things that I was trying to hide and I was ashamed of when I was a kid are now things that I think that's why I encourage people so much to embrace who they are.
Yes, the authentic.
Because I was ashamed, and I don't want anyone to ever feel that way.
No.
Yes. So the talking show, and then I have a production company at AMC, and we've sold a bunch of shows. I'm writing movies for Blumhouse, horror movies, because Lydia and I love horror movies. And I'm making a science show for NBC.
Oh, I love it.
Like a science and technology show.
Are you going to hire your wife in the movie?
I mean, if she'll do it, yes. She's on a series right now. She's in Washington State working on a show for the summer. And so if she's available, then I would love to have her come.
Well, I can't wait. Maybe we can do a double date when Donnie comes in town.
That would be, I've never met your husband before.
Everybody loves Donnie.
It's so nice to see you. And all these years when people are always trying to get dirt. And I'm like, I don't have anything bad.
There's
like
nothing.
She's always been so sweet to me, and we
always, I swear, like loved each other, like not like in a weird way, but just whenever you've been brought up or I think about you, I just nothing but love.
And also, I do think at the time we were doing Singled Out, I mean, I know I had some jealousy over like, God, Jenny's really. People are really embracing, and I just feel like I'm disappearing on this show. And I look back and I think I would not have been able to handle what you handled. I wouldn't have been able to handle it because I didn't have the presence of mind. I didn't have the sobriety. I didn't have the understanding.
Chris,
and I would have died. I think I would have died.
And let me just say something. You're such an intellect that I understood fart jokes. I knew the audience. You were so smart. You were Dennis Miller.
I don't know about
22.
That. Now I go back. Now I've re-embraced the fart jokes.
But now I mean, I could see, looking at it, like I go, you were Dennis Miller at 22. Like this is exactly why. Like this is your time. Like you were so beyond your years.
Well, I appreciate that.
Absolutely, and I could not be happier. So 23 years. Let's not wait again. And maybe there's the Singled Out divorced reunion comedy special.
Divorced Singled Out.
I'm telling you, I think it could be the biggest comedy special in 2 years.
I love the idea.
Right? Thank you, Chris Hardwick.
Thank you for having me on, Jenny McCarthy. Jenny McCarthy, ladies and
Chris
gentlemen.
Hardwick. We'll be right back.
Jenny McCarthy Show. Oh!